You're in charge of yourself, of your life, of your decisions, and you take really responsibility for everything that's been happening, and then gradually you start turning the tide. And the process can take a long time and be painful and bumpy, but it's definitely worth the ride.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, my name's Rick Nusky and welcome back to the My Future Business Show, and thank you so very much for supporting the show. The feedback that I have been receiving is just nothing short of humbling, and it's making all of the difference knowing that the show is making a difference for you. Now, on today, I'm with the wonderful Jelena Radonjic. How are you, Jelena? I knew I'd have trouble with that one.
No problem. I'm really well and delighted to be on the show.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you here now. I've been doing my research on your background, and you are very skilled. You've had a lot of experience worldwide, and you are a career and leadership development coach. We're going to obviously take a deep dive into that, Jelena. But before we do that, it's custom for us to start off to talk a little bit about, I guess, you personally, a little bit about what you do outside of the work sphere, including, where are you located right now?
Sure. Well, I'm based in London, UK, and I have been here no less than 25 years, so a long time.
Fantastic.
Before that, I was in Tokyo for 4 years, Tokyo, Japan, and then before that, I lived in my native country of Serbia, and I was in Belgrade. That's where I grew up and finished university, and then set off to explore the world.
Fantastic.
What I do outside work, that's a very good question, because I started to chuckle to myself thinking not much these days because of the lockdown.
Oh, yes.
Because of the lockdown, this year has been really funny, but what I did, I just buckled down and focused on my work. I work from home pretty much anyway, because I see clients on Zoom.
Yep.
Those clients that I used to see face to face, we moved online. So yeah, I just focused on my work and accelerating the development of my career coaching business. So I'd say on the whole, this year has been good for me in that sense, in unexpected ways. But apart from that, what I do is just occasional jog or walk, gym, yoga and meditation. Yes, that one is the most important one, which I never miss every morning.
Fantastic. I'd love to talk a little bit about, I guess, your daily routines a little bit later on in the show, Jelena, because I think one of the most important points about the My Future Business Show that differentiates us is the fact that there are people behind businesses, and it's very important for, I guess, startup entrepreneurs, those who are just starting, to understand that this is very much a journey, and there are certain things that those who are successful are doing, and that's what I'd like to draw out from you as we go through today's call. So thank you very much for introducing us. Now, I found it very interesting that not only have you worked across 3 countries, but I guess you would have got a very good understanding of the cultural dynamics between countries. For example, Japan has a very unique set of, I guess, cultural structures in terms of gift giving and things of that nature. What is, I guess, one of the common threads that you've noticed from country to country that are common in business?
Very interesting question. I'd say, first of all, culturally, doing business across different cultures and countries could be a minefield.
Yeah.
I remember reading some funny stories that were quoted as examples in a book that I thoroughly recommend to anyone who does cross-cultural business, and that's Riding the Waves of Culture by von Strompenaars. And just some funny stories describing various mistakes people do when they say work between Americans and Japanese, or say Australians and Japanese, or different even European countries and European mentalities that can be quite at odds with each other. In business, I'd say obviously, knowing the right business etiquette in terms of communication, negotiation, very important. Having at least the basic understanding of the culture and the business culture so that you can show your respect and appreciation in the most appropriate way, I'd say is very important. And then knowing the finer details of whether you need to be direct or not, and how much. So all of these can actually really seriously affect the outcomes of different business transactions or proposals, or particularly negotiations, I would say.
I can only imagine it must have been a minefield, especially when you were early into your career. What are some of the moments that you can recall early on that really opened your eyes up to some of these experiences? Would you mind sharing a little bit about one?
Sure, of course. I just remembered a funny anecdote. I don't know if it opened my eyes to anything, but it certainly amused a lot of people. So to be truthful, I didn't go completely unprepared. I studied Japanese language and literature and English language and literature at university. So I did these two parallel degrees. So I was very excited when I landed my first corporate job in Japan. At the time, apparently I was the first woman from then Yugoslavia to land a corporate job in Japan, which was very odd. And I was interviewed by different newspapers, both in Yugoslavia at the time and in Japan. So anyway, that put me in an unexpected spotlight. So obviously, yes, I was learning about the culture, and my language was quite proficient, but not quite yet completely fluent. So I thought I was prepared. But one of the things that, even though I liked Japanese cuisine and had tried different bits, I wasn't quite prepared to actually eat fish that was still living. And that's exactly what happened. We were, that was kind of a special dinner for me to greet me. And my then former university tutor traveled with me because he introduced me to the company and so forth. So it was a wonderful dinner in Japanese tradition with ladies in kimonos serving us. But at one point, so we were eating sashimi slices of raw fish, and at one point, as I was putting that into my mouth, and I was finding it a bit difficult to chew on it, to be honest. I preferred sushi with a bit of rice. I just saw that this beautiful fish, which was cut up and decorated with flowers, it moved. The eye moved and the head moved, and I jumped back, started crying.
Oh, wow.
I was really in shock, and everyone just died laughing. They were like, ha, ha, ha. So that was quite unexpected and something I'll always remember. And I love sashimi these days, but I've never seen actually or went for that type of experience where you actually have a
moving fish. No, this is what I love about being the host of this show, and is to have these stories come to the fore and have a bit of a laugh with it. So thank you very much for sharing. Now, you mentioned that you have, well, I guess you now speak fluent in a number of languages. You said there are 4. What are the other 2?
Right. I used to be fluent in French. That was, as I was growing up, I was learning English and French in parallel. But then when I came to uni, I chose Japanese. So my French kind of dropped. So I'd say conversationally, I'm still fluent in Japanese. I visited actually last year after 19 years. So we're talking quite a way back.
Yeah.
My language came back to me. I do have friends and former colleagues and bosses that I still keep in touch with. As for French, I guess I understand a lot more than I can say. But, you know, if you dropped me somewhere in rural France and I had no recourse to anything else, I'll probably start speaking.
It seems to me that you take up these things like a fish to water, pardon the pun.
It is my thing, I believe, yes. I love languages. I took up Spanish as well at some point, and I remember my eldest son coming into my room saying, "Mom, what are you reading?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just relaxing. I'm learning some Spanish grammar." And he rolled his eyes. He said, "How on earth could you be relaxing learning grammar?"
Well, talking about books, I'd like to a little bit later on, because I know that you co-authored a book called Joy Recipes for Abundance. Now, we'll come back to that in a little while if you don't mind, but you've had more than 25 years of international recruitment and educational management experience. You've worked with the likes of UNICEF, Tottenham Hotspurs Football Club, HSBC, Microsoft, and many other huge names. Now, how has this experience come about that you've worked for all these major clients?
Sure. My recruitment experience was mostly with large corporates that some of them you mentioned, some of them are more recent examples of where my coaching clients found work, but it's still connected very much to the idea of jobs or work or a career.
Yeah.
So in the past, having started my corporate career in Japan, I then worked for the same company for 10 years, 4 years in Tokyo and 6 years in London, running their European operations. And this was in the early career and graduate recruitment space. So we would run large careers fairs around Europe, US, and Japan. And my clients were major corporations. So I was basically helping them identify and source and select top talent. So for me, that had a special meaning because I myself was thrilled that my dream came true, which was to be able to use what I studied and what I was passionate about in an early career when I landed that job in Tokyo. Yeah. So I was super passionate about facilitating that kind of process for other young people in Europe, in Japan and the US. So that's what I did for a number of years. And then later on in London, I worked for a number of smaller providers on the recruitment side. Again, mostly either through careers events or bespoke campaigns for major corporates. I also had the stint at the University of London Career Service, which was interesting. Again, working with employers, not with students, to help them source the best talent.
That's wonderful feedback. That's a great story. And this obviously led you to where you shifted gears and you became a career and leadership development coach at What Work. Yes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's my company. That's my brand. And the reason why I called it What Work, again, speaks about my sort of deeper motives or how I understand the idea or concept and practice of work. So to me, work is a very meaningful and super important activity that we engage in our lives, all of us as humans. Apparently, we spend around 90,000 hours working on average in lifetime. So that's a lot of hours. And I'm really passionate about helping people create a meaningful career and a meaningful life based on that. So in that sense, that's why I decided to call my consultancy What Work. Because work includes job, career, business, any sort of activity, that enables you to make a living, but in a meaningful way.
See, I was reading through your bio earlier, Jelena, and you talked a lot about how as human beings, we place a lot of value in our ability to work and I guess add value to others and to our environment, and just to, I guess, maybe prove to ourselves that we are valuable. Is that part of the psyche behind this?
I think so. Yes, that's at least that's what's transpired over, I'd say, a few decades as I was involved in recruitment. So kind of hands-on. But also in placing people into positions and sort of facilitating this change, but also through my own personal development and spiritual practice that was also developing in the background over the years in parallel with my corporate career, because I was always fascinated with human growth and personal growth, and also why some people are successful and others are not, why some people are fulfilled and others are not, and how all of that ties back with what they do and how they do it and what choices they made in relation to their careers and education as well.
You have had a lot of experience as a career coach, but you also help people with branding, giving interviews, their social media exposure. So there's a lot going on here. But as you move through time and you mature, Jelena, you also have a spiritual side to you, and that's coming through because you've worked with the likes of Deepak Chopra, and John DeMartini. Tell us a little bit about that experience and what those experiences did for you.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the reasons why I decided to shift, as you say, shift gears and become a career coach was quite a few years back. I was looking at what it is that I can do because I knew I wanted to do something by myself on my own to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it that brings everything together? And that's where I got the recruitment experience, commercial experience, as well as the personal development and personal growth and spiritual practice that I've been engaged in,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of merged all of that and started my career coaching practice. Of course, I qualified as a coach, but a lot of training that I had, apart from the official coach training, has been in the domain of I'd say personal growth and personal development and
Mm-hmm.
transformational coaching domain, which is different workshops and retreats that I engaged in primarily for me personally, but also, of course, they benefited me a lot professionally. So as for John DeMartini, I did his breakthrough experience a few years back, I believe in 2016. As for Deepak Chopra, I followed him. I love his podcasts, his books. I do his guided meditations. And then last summer, I attended his retreat in Hawaii called The Seduction of Spirit, which was absolutely phenomenal. Prior to all of that, I worked with a spiritual teacher for about 5 years here in London, and I attended a few other transformational coaching programs. So all of that, all these sort of incremental shifts and bigger breakthroughs that I was able to sort of experience myself brought another dimension to me, as I would say, as a person and as a professional, and I can channel all of that into my coaching.
I love this. This is why I love doing this, because it brings, I guess, the humanistic side out of those who are very successful in business. What is one of the main things that you learnt about yourself during that time, do you think?
I guess one of the biggest breakthroughs at the time, because I was going through difficult, challenging situations in my personal life, as we all do from time to time.
Yep.
And I think it was the moment of moving from a place of disempowerment into a place of being empowered. And I'd say the shift was incremental, and then there were some bigger breakthroughs. And I guess my eyes opened first, and I was really taken aback when my then spiritual teacher asked me, so what is your contribution to this problem, to this drama, to this terrible situation? And I was like, what?
Yeah, I'm responsible.
I'm right. They are wrong. It's not me. So of course it was a stab, but it really woke me up and sort of pushed me to really take personal responsibility for everything in my life that I thought I was kind of taking. But actually this was a different dimension where you really acknowledge what you've been avoiding to acknowledge, and put yourself in a sovereign space where you really are, I'd say, in charge. I don't like the word in control so much because it can imply manipulation and whatever, but you're in charge of yourself, of your life, of your decisions. And you take really responsibility for everything that's been happening, and then gradually you start turning the tide. So things are not happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
You are creating your reality. And the process can take a long time and be painful and bumpy, but it's definitely worth worth the ride.
There's some sage insights. Thank you so much, Jelena, for sharing. Now, this call could go so many different directions, but I think what I'd like to do is go through what a day looks like for you firstly, because I think it's important from a professional perspective as well as your spiritual side. Can you share a little bit about, what a typical day looks like from you?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I meditate regularly in the morning, so that will be probably the first thing that I do. A friend of mine said, "Oh, you wake up and then you go to sleep again." You could do it that way.
If possible.
But it's not really sleeping. Meditation is the place and space of deep relaxation, and it can feel like deep sleep, but it's very relaxing and restful. And I see a big difference if I skip my morning meditation for about between 20 and 30 minutes. I do it. My day can pan out differently. So I stick to it. It's a beautiful routine, and I would really recommend to everyone. And whatever meditation, works for you. I practice transcendental meditation, which I recently refreshed and upgraded with Deepak Chopra. However, yes, I would say a quiet moment during the day, whether it's meditation or reflection or breathing, very important, so that you can keep your mind fresh and you operate from a place of calm rather than being frantic. I used to be frantic. I still get from time to time to be a bit frantic and manic and rushing to do many things, but
so you are human after all.
Absolutely.
I wonder, Jelena, when you're doing this, do you find that it clears your mind? And when it does clear your mind, if that's the case, what is your mindset like at that point in time? And if you are in a busy situation, you're not able to just, meditate, how do you reset your mindset?
Great question. I think the sort of peace and calm that you ground yourself in during the meditation lasts for quite a while, but obviously not forever.
No.
Much like, again, a spiritual teacher of mine said, you don't take the shower only once. You take a shower once a day at least. So if you want to be fresh. So this is literally like cleansing. And later on during the day, if I get very busy or stressed, I'd say stepping back and just taking some deep breaths is really, really good. Also reminding myself that, it's just a momentary thing and that I will do better if I step back, breathe, observe, and then make a decision or take my next step. Going back to my day, because I never actually shared that. Yeah, so the rest of the day is working with my clients, working in my business and on my business. So
very important distinction, isn't it? On as opposed to in.
Yes, very important. And that's one of the things that I have to say I'm becoming a bit better at, but there's still a long way to go, which is setting chunks of time aside to really work on my business. And I don't mean just creating content, which I do a lot of. I write and publish and do videos and all sorts of things. But I also mean setting some quiet time to plan and to revise. And that's been a struggle, I have to confess, but I'm getting better at it.
Is there a moment where you use, it seems to me like with the likes of Deepak Chopra's work, that it would be very much memory set and you don't actually verbalize mantras or anything like that. A mantra is something that are useful, do you think?
The bit of transcendental meditation that I do does have a mantra which you sort of refer to or repeat in meditation. As for other things during the day, I often ask my clients to set themselves a reminder. For example, something important would transpire through our coaching process. And then I would ask them to either create a post-it note or It could be an object that is on their desk or in their wallet if they carry it with them, something they can look at often to remind themselves. Actually, I'll show you something. I didn't plan to do this, but why not? I don't know if you can see this. It says, "Let me think about it."
Yes, I can. Very clearly.
This is a coaster, and I also have a key ring. So this was my own sort of reminder. I made this quite a few years ago, I guess around the time when I was going through lots of personal life challenges that I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And I just created this because it would remind me to stop and step away and then look at the situation and then give my answer. Hence, let me think about it, because in the past I used to say yes a lot to everything and everyone, feeling that I've got to cater to everyone's needs, whether that's family, work, or whatever. And if you don't actually capture that and stop it, you can burn out.
There's some power in saying no, isn't there?
Sorry?
There is some power in saying no.
Yes, yeah, it's about really being aware of of these boundaries where your well-being stops and begins.
Yeah.
And also being able to prioritize yourself and your needs because you deserve it.
Absolutely.
And also by taking care of yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, you bring yourself to a better version of yourself, and therefore you can help others better or serve your clients better or whatever it is that you're doing.
Thank you. This is a wonderful call. It's gone through so many different phases already. Now, talking about helping others, your whole focus is helping people identify, reach and retain careers they love. I've checked out your website. I'm just wondering if we can talk through, I guess, the mechanics of how you do this. Would we be able to do that?
Yes, absolutely. Very happy to talk about that. So I have my own methodology, which I developed and honed over a number of years coaching clients, given that I coach clients from a variety of industries. So it's not industry specific, but in terms of the sort of main audience, I would say mid-career to senior professionals. And the methodology, we first of all look at what's inside. I always insist on introspection, on reflection, and building awareness of who we truly are, what matters to us, what our values are, what our strengths and competencies and skills, but also natural talents and affinities are. And equally, what is holding us back, the so-called saboteurs or limiting beliefs. I particularly like doing that sort of work with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they like it. Sometimes they complain and kick. And
very confronting.
But of course, in a gentle way. But to my mind, successful coaching needs to be a balance between support and challenge. So to go back to the methodology, I'd say at least 3 to 4 sessions would go into this initial phase, which I call unwrap the gifts. So we get a lot of things in the open, and then we move into the middle phase of, again, another, say, 3 or 4 sessions where we look at the options. In other words, what is it that you want to do with what you've got? Of course, we're talking here about careers, and often most actually of my clients are in some sort of career transition. Occasionally, they could be looking for career development, which means progressing in the same organization, but majority of them are looking for some sort of transition, which could be finding a new job or moving to a different type of role or even moving industries. Some clients move countries and roles and industries, the so-called triple jump. So very complex transitions.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not just about, pass the interview and that's it. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at a whole host of factors, including their, personal life, family life, their relationships, because everything is connected. That's, again, one of the things that I insist on as a career coach. I want to work with clients who are open to transformation and who are brave enough to look at all aspects of their lives, because you can't just you cannot really say, boost your confidence with regards to your career and not to everything else. You cannot set firm boundaries and stop overworking or overgiving just in your career. That's going to affect your personal life as well in a good way. So the effects of coaching are multiple and
wide-reaching.
Cover, yes, all aspects of life. So from this middle phase, then once we've brainstormed and I have a lot of different tools and things that I use, we then identify one or two options that we want to explore deeper, and we then move into the implementation phase. Sometimes, actually, often recently, that option could be setting up on your own. So I've coached a number of clients successfully into setting up their own venture, their own business. So again, the implementation phase for that particular scenario is different, of course, from someone who's transitioning into a different job. So then we would look at the basics of the business, of the setup, of their product or service, market, and so forth, just refining the basics really and putting that into place. For those who are transitioning in terms of finding a different role or a industry or just moving companies and so forth, the implementation phase is going to be around interview prep, LinkedIn, networking, creating your elevator pitch, very important actually, both for new entrepreneurs and corporate people.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few things that overlap. I would say mostly around personal branding, which, as you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I
Mm-hmm.
cover as well in the function of a career transition.
There's a lot to unpack here for somebody when you're working with them. I guess there'd be, a bit of a self-revelation for somebody who works with you and having to reveal truths about themselves and share their belief structures with you. This would take time. So Does it take time, and do you build relationships, long-term relationships with your clients?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd say the typical sort of 9 sessions, which is the minimum that I would work with the clients, would take anything from 3.5 to 6 months, depending on how we space them. The mindset work, or the mind shift rather, that happens in the background, because we work on that as well,
Mm-hmm.
that is the bit that takes time. And that's something that cannot be rushed. So sometimes I have to explain to clients who are very keen to move on and do this, that, and the other, that certain things just take time. For a longer program, my high-end program, the Ultimate Career Transformation, I would say 5 to 6 months minimum. And yes, of course, we build fantastic relationships. I have clients reaching out to me, taking up coaching with me again. I have a client who worked with me last year and then came back this year. Even though he effected a successful transition,
Mm-hmm.
he moved to a high-level role in Amazon. He got 67% increase in his package, all sorts of wonderful things. But because he wants to start something on his own in the next 2 years, he came back. So we are now working more on the ideas for his startup. I had a client who reached out to me literally last week. Last time I saw him was April 2019. And at the time, he, again, successfully transitioned in the sense that he got a role he wanted in banking. But he was very much surprised when I suggested that he should look into his passion, which at the time was just a hobby, and perhaps consider a career in that, which is all about health and fitness, running in particular, and so on. So he contacted me a week ago saying, I'm now finally moving in that direction, and thank you so much. So it's phenomenal how these things that transpire through coaching, they're not just for today or for tomorrow. People can draw on the material, almost like a repository of tools and worksheets and insights that they can draw on that for years to come and still reap the benefits.
There's clearly a lot of success stories associated with the work that you've done, and I can't think of anyone better to make these transitions in any way, shape or form that they're wanting to do, Jelena. Now, importantly, when somebody wants to work with you, where are they going to find you, and what is the process when they get there?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn more than anywhere else. So I'd suggest to everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, because I share a lot of content there, which is absolutely free and beneficial. Apart from that, I have a Facebook group called All Things Career. And of course, my website is probably the best starting point if you want to have an overview of my work, and there's some client testimonials there. There's of course lots of that on LinkedIn as well. My website is whatwork.co.uk. So it's quite simple. And from there, you can actually contact me and book a free discovery call to explore, if you're at crossroads, what's next and where the coaching is for you.
Thank you very much, Jelena. Now, if you're on the call with us today, it is custom for me to make sure that you have access to all of the links back to Jelena and her wonderful work. If it's time for you to make these changes, most definitely reach out to Jelena at whatwork.co.uk. And Jelena, with all that being said, I have had such a wonderful time spending some time with you on the My Future Business show today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for inviting me, Rick. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.